I have a video on here about whether or not, or the pros and the cons of investing in a house with an HOA. And that video and the information in that video is very similar to what I want to hit on in here is kind of the pros and cons of investing with Section 8 tenants. So should you do it or should you not? Well, much like I was talking about with the HOA, there's kind of pros and cons. And for me, it depends with Section 8 on where we're talking about and what neighborhoods exactly are we talking about, what states are we talking about, because Section 8 can have different laws, or it dictates different things for different states, or um, like, what's the word? Not, I was about to say governing bodies, but like the municipalities or whatever. So Section 8 may be a lot better in some states than it is for other states. But as a general thought, the pro and con, so I have one property in particular that I've had a Section 8 tenant, and she's been in there for 7 years, maybe 6, 7 years. So it's been a long-term relationship. And here are the pros and cons that I've experienced with Section 8. Obviously, the biggest pro is it's guaranteed rent. That's what everybody talks about with Section 8 is like, then, it's not up to the tenant, it's up to the city or the whoever puts that payment out. But I will put a little bit of information on that, is make sure you know how much of the rent payment is being covered by Section 8, because in many Section 8 cases, if not most, the tenant is responsible for a portion of the rent, and Section 8 covers the other portion. I always had it in my head that Section 8 pays the whole thing, and then my whole rent payment is guaranteed every time. Well, if the tenant is paying a portion, ultimately you're probably going to get that payment, because they'll get kicked out of Section 8 if they're not keeping up their end of the deal. But realizing, like with that property in particular that I have, I get 2 rent payments a month. Part of it Section 8, part of it from the tenant. Sometimes the tenant's late, they don't always match up all the time. So just realize that it's not necessarily a guarantee of the whole rent payment. But that's kind of neither here nor there, but information I didn't know in the beginning. So the pros and cons about my Section 8, one of the perceived cons of Section 8 is the quality of the tenant. Again, this is probably going to vary by state. It's going to vary by property type. It's going to vary all over the place. But on one hand, you do introduce lower earning individuals, and that could sometimes come with lower quality in general. On the other hand, Section 8 also keeps a pretty tight wrap on them, where, they have to perform, they have to behave, and they have to do certain things in order to keep their vouchers. So it's a little bit of a trade-off there of, yeah, you may not get the highest quality tenant, but they all are also under rules. And, whether they necessarily follow them or not, who knows, but, Section 8 does keep an eye on them. So that's a little bit on like the tenant quality kind of pro and con trade-off. I don't even know how to say it, like, the pro and the con. Another thing is Section 8, while sometimes annoying, and this is actually similar to what I was talking about with the HOA, it's annoying when you have to get additional inspections and you have to do certain maintenance items to keep up with the Section 8 requirements. The benefits of that as a landlord is somebody else is keeping an eye on your property. Me as a long distance owner, that's great, because I need those inspections because I'm not there personally to do them myself. So it actually kind of works out great for the long distance investor, because you have a second set of eyes, and they're going to call out any major things going on. They even call out small things going on, honestly, and they make you fix them. So it is kind of like, I don't want to call it a free inspection, but it's kind of a free inspection. You inevitably have to pay money to fix the things, but you do have eyes on the property, which is really handy. But then the annoying factor is that they will be dictating to you to do these inspections, you have to keep it up. And some of the things I've had to fix for Section 8 just seem absolutely pointless. And here I am spending money, not a ton of money, but small things. I can't even think of, I don't know, a chip out of the counter or something. So there's an annoyance factor, but then the trade-off is that you get extra eyes on your property. And then, it's 2020 right now, and ironically, of all my properties, my Section 8 payment from the city was the only one so far that was delayed, which is hilarious because it's the guaranteed one. It was delayed because the city was totally backed up with COVID, all that drama. So it was delayed, but it was still a guaranteed payment, so I did get it eventually. And in a situation like COVID, one of the biggest fears of landlords is tenants stopping paying. And if you have Section 8, you're covered. The city's not going to stop paying regardless of a worldwide pandemic. So, again, it's kind of a trade-off situation. There's no right answer. One of the best things that you could do is talk to locals in the area that you're planning to invest and get more information about the Section 8 dynamics in that particular market. Because I work with all out-of-state properties, there are certain markets that I've worked in certain neighborhoods where you actually can make more with a Section 8 tenant than you can a market tenant, meaning non-Section 8 tenants who pay market rent. And the Section 8 tenants, generally, those properties are much more successful when it goes through Section 8. That's a dynamic that you can't really Google. Does this particular neighborhood function better with Section 8? Who knows? But you can call local property managers, get their feeling for how, what are any potential consequences, what are benefits of Section 8 in those areas, what are the legislations around it, what are requirements, just general information, because you may or may not want it. It may or may not be the best thing that you can do for a particular property, depending on what and where you're buying. So, don't rule it out. Don't assume it's 100% foolproof. Again, pros and cons to everything, and just realizing what that spectrum is of the pros and cons and figuring out where you're comfortable is really going to be your answer.